All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and try this, but I've got a nice juicy story to tell you. This is about my past, so I mean, I don't know if everybody uh, has some interesting stories about their past and any advice on how to deal with it. But when I was about 19 years old, I mean, I'm almost 45 now. So this was, let's see, 2000. This is about 2000. Yeah, about 2000. So this was like 25 years ago, somewhere in there. I was at South Salem High School in Salem, Oregon. Okay, and I'm in Dallas, Oregon now. And Dallas here, and so that's basically that was Marion County, and this is where I'm at now is Polk County. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's oversharing or what have you, but I don't really care at this point. I would like to get started with, basically, my dad and I were not really getting on. I mean, we were bickering and fighting. My mother had passed away when I was 17, so I was 19. And I was still going through some pretty nasty stuff at school. I still had some credits that I needed to take care of. So basically, you had to take. I was gonna say you got to go do those by the time you have to go, so that you can graduate. And so I was behind by about, I think, 3 or 4 credits. And they had a credit recovery program, where they could do those at the school, but then you had to go and take the tests elsewhere. And I'm having trouble remembering what they call your tests. So, I mean, please forgive me for all this. I mean, I had a really rough night. My kiddo was up from probably, I'm going to make this quick. No, he was up from all the way until about 3:30, 4 o'clock this morning. Watching TV. I mean, he's autistic, so... Anyways, we're going to get past that. No, anyways, my dad was dating all kinds of women, and finally there was this one woman that finally, I don't know what her issue was, but she blew cigarette smoke in my face. She walks up to me, and she was like this, and she goes, had that kind of like that what you gonna do about it kind of look on her face. And we were doing cosmic bowling up in Portland, or one of the towns around Portland, Oregon. Okay. And then there was a train that you would catch, and it was one of those ones kind of like in Japan where you get on the train and it goes really fast. And we were standing there waiting, and she did that. She goes, And then I just, bam, and I just like slapped the cigarette out of her hand. And it flew out of this woman's hand, and it flew. And then she goes, "Do you realize how expensive cigarettes are?" Da, 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 da. And I said, "Yeah, I do. But you know what else I realize? That I don't appreciate people blowing cigarette smoke in my face. That secondhand smoke." And I smoked myself, and I was still smoking. I don't smoke now, but anyway, this is like a fake one. And all of a sudden I looked around and I went, let's see. Oh, there it is. And I picked it up, and her brother was a pothead. But I asked him, I said, "Y'all, you got a lighter?" I'm like, and I lit it, Emma. Right in her face, and I was like, "You like that? How does that feel nice?" That is the most disrespectful thing I have ever seen. I don't give a shit if you're a woman or a man. You don't blow secondhand smoke in my face. And then later on, I found out that he broke it. He was already in the throes of, pretty much getting ready to break it off with her. My dad and everything. And he was getting ready to break it off with her and everything. And so the next thing you know, I had heard this horror story where he had bought, he had purchased a, I'm trying to sound educated. No, he had bought, he had purchased, I'm trying to sound. No, so he had purchased an engagement ring, and they were going to get married. And she goes, "Well, we're just going to, send him off to military school." And I didn't even know that she had even suggested something like that until my father and I had actually spoke, and actually sat down and talked about it. And you can see how bad I'm shaking like this, because I pretty much was up all night. And it was, this is terrible. I'm having to drink coffee and stuff to be able to stay awake. And my ex-wife and I had just gotten into a nasty argument before she had just walked out the door, like probably about a half an hour ago. So, I'm trying not to get into that either. She is a good person. She really is. She was gracious enough to say, "You know what? Why don't you come live with me?" Because I was pretty much homeless. I was staying at the UGM, or the Union Gospel Mission in Salem, and they try to make everything all spiffy neat and etc., but we'll get into that later in a different video. But anyways, no. I guess what had happened is she had taken the ring and she threw it across the room when she found out that my dad had pretty much said, "You know what? No, I'm not going to marry you if you're going to try to ship my child off." And she threw it, and it popped the stone out of it, the diamond. And he was like on his hands and knees, you know, all over, looking all over the carpet for it and everything. And finally he found it. And I guess he had purchased it the same place. I think it was the Shane Company, which is where my ex-wife and I had, which is where I got, which is where I had purchased, you know, an engagement ring for my ex-wife and everything. And it was almost perfect. I mean, you looked at it under the microscope and it had like maybe like dot, dot, dot. Like if it was a square like this, it was like dot, dot, dot. And it was very, very faint. I mean, you could barely see any imperfections in it. But anyways, no, this woman threw it across the room against the wall. And it was, I was like, you know, you gotta be kidding. And I called her the B word. I said, you know what? And taking the cigarette, you think you're all that, don't you? You know, or something. And I think I said, you know, F you and all this other stuff. I mean, I'm trying to not swear, but I had a terrible potty mouth when I was younger. And it was, I go to church now, so it's like I try to watch my mouth. And there are missionaries that come here and they knock, you know, they knock on the door. Hey, how's it going? You know, and we sit down and we talk about certain things from, it's the Book of Mormon, etc. So I try to keep my mouth clean, but and especially for my kiddo too, because you know he has got some issues with potty mouth. But anyways, I'm trying not to veer off, and I keep doing it because I'm really tired. Anyway, I'll continue with more videos. I got some really cool stuff. It's like science fiction type stuff if you want to see it. And those are some pretty cool stuff. I'm very artistic, and I've also got some paintings that I would like to share for those. And then if anybody wants to purchase those, you know, you can I'll certainly give you a link to those, or a phone number, etc. But I love these. Look, I mean, look, these bring back childhood memories. These are, you know, the Tupperware things, you know. But afterward, he sat me down, and then we were driving, and then he told me, oh yeah, by the way, I broke it off with, I don't remember what her name is. I'm gonna leave it at that, the fact that I don't want to use her name. Just because I want to be respectful and just like, no, I'm not gonna use somebody's name. Anyone's name. But I don't know what happened to her. All I know is that after that she disappeared. He got his money back for the ring and everything, and he pretty much said, you know, here's what happened to the ring, you know. She threw it across the room, and then and they said, oh, don't worry about it, you know, we'll be able to, you know, pop that back in there, you know, and, you know, give it to somebody else, or just take the stone and just do whatever we can with it and see if somebody else would like it. I mean, there's no damage to the stone itself. But for the ring itself, I don't know if that was damaged or not, but I think it must have been, because I think one of the little, like how they have the 4 little things that kind of do this to hold it. I think one of them had broken, and that's why the stone came out. Oh, he was pissed. But the whole thing about that, it really bothers me to bring up old stuff. I mean, I try not to do that, but last night I couldn't help it. But then when my kiddo was like, well, what are you talking to yourself? And I was like, dang it. And then I had to stop the video and erase it because anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go now. And then I'm going to do some more videos. Okay, thank you very much.